B and C vitamin, but they retain their nutrient integrity because they're blanched and flash frozen. So really, after a week, they're going to hold more nutrition than a fresh vegetable that's been sitting in your fridge. And but the other thing is, someone's done the prep work for you, so that takes away the excuse of like, well, I don't have time to like cut and prepare all of this and so on. It's like, no, it's already been done for you. You can, and then maybe I would say outsource the cooking to your appliances if you feel like you don't have time. So I have a rice cooker, I have a slow cooker, I have an oven. So I generally speaking will want to cook things that don't necessarily require my monitoring. So let's say I could make roast veggies. So I'll just take it, throw into a glass tray, put some seasoning on it, put it in the oven, set a timer for 25 minutes, go away, come back, and I have roast vegetables. That took me less than 60 seconds.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Food School Smarter, Stronger, Leaner podcast on a mission to inspire a world where food makes us better. Guys, today is Tuesday and it's the second day of the week, and I hope your healthy eating, healthy living, nutrition and fitness motivations are still going really strong. Guys, today I have a surprise for you. We have a guest on Food School podcast again, and today on Food School podcast I'm talking with Coach Jon McLernon. Coach Jon is a weight loss coach and emotional eating expert who has lost 100 pounds or a little bit less than 50 kilograms if you're in metrics. From nanotechnology researcher to Navy Marine engineer to globetrotting nomad, Coach Jon spent most of his life running from his true calling until one question changed his life. Now he's on a mission to help others lose weight for good and live BS diets in the rearview mirror. With Freedom Nutrition Coaching, Jon marries the science of metabolism with the psychology of behavior change and the compassion of human connection to create life-changing transformations with his clients. On this conversation, guys, you learn so much about the science of healthy living and specifically weight loss science, and you'll hear about so many practical tools that you can start using in your life today to make your weight loss journey so much less of a struggle. On this podcast, we talk about how weight loss is not about, macros or carbs or calories. No, it's about identity. It's about the answer to this question, who am I as a human being? And the answer to this question will define what kind of choices you're going to make every day. Also, we talk a lot about how our overly abundant with food environment makes us all a little bit or a lot more likely to overeat and overindulge. It's all built kind of against of our healthy eating habits. So identity, environment, the science of changing behavior, the science and practicality of emotional management that has a lot to do with food. Also, Coach Jon shares a lot of practical tips and hacks and tricks, how he makes healthy eating super simple, how he cooks his meals under 2 minutes, and how you can too. Healthy eating, guys, it can be delicious, exciting, and also very simple and non-time consuming. So without further ado, please grab a cup of coffee or a drink of your choice or some water, and enjoy our conversation, weight loss and health wisdom packed episode with Coach Jon and Food School podcast. Jon McLernon, welcome to Food School Smarter, Stronger, Leaner podcast.
Thank you.
So pumped to have you on. Give our listeners a little bit of backstory so they know where you're coming from.
So I live in a city called Red Deer in the province of Alberta in Canada. So if anybody is an American listener, it would be north of the state of Montana. And I would say I kind of a pretty varied background that led me to kind of where I'm at right now. So I've been a nanotechnology researcher involved in chemistry at University of Victoria. I was a marine engineer in the Navy, Canadian Navy, 4-time entrepreneur with 2 failed businesses, and a globetrotting English teacher, traveling to about 45 countries on 5 continents. I've lived in 7 countries. So I spent quite a bit of time traveling with my wife, who is from Australia. So it was kind of for the backstory. It was during my travels that I went from kind of being athletic to being morbidly obese, and it was a result of some trauma that I suffered a little over 10 years ago when living in South Africa, which kind of then began my journey of weight loss. Because prior to that, I would have thought that anybody who was overweight, I would have said they were just lazy or undisciplined. But after going through trauma and basically not being equipped to handle it, I don't think human beings are really, truthfully. I turned to food as a coping mechanism because I really had no tools. So I became basically a binge eating food addict, and food was my way of medicating my trauma. And so as I was, in a sense, could I say, for lack of a better term, coming to my senses and like what the heck happened? How did I get here? I gained quite a bit of weight over a 6-month span. I now all of a sudden had to try to figure out, how do I lose weight? Like I've never really been in this situation before, and it felt very hopeless because it had happened really so suddenly. But weight loss itself, I can say, looking back, like it actually takes some time to be able to do it in a way that it will last and be permanent. So I spent a lot of time, many failed attempts at losing weight, a lot of like wasted energy, trying to find answers in all the wrong places, until I actually hired a coach who I say they shined a light on the really big glaring problem staring back at me. This wasn't an issue of necessarily of knowledge or information in my case, but it was really connected to my relationship with myself, and then by extension my relationship to food. So because I tried to lose weight and failed a number of times, it's like I became angry at my body, like really, I could even say spiteful. But it was like I was trying to punish my body into submission. I was trying to force it to do what I wanted to do. And so working with this coach, he helped me to, I would say, heal my relationship with myself, and then by extension with food. And that created this huge, what I say, paradigm shift, because all of a sudden I saw weight loss kind of in a different light, because I was actually coaching people even back then. Because I'm actually pretty well educated. I'm precision nutrition level 2 master coach as well. And I was a certified personal trainer, though for the record, I haven't maintained it through a certifying body because my real passion lies in nutrition and psychology. But that's kind of what got me to doing what I'm doing. So it's really connected to my own personal experience and struggles with gaining a lot of weight, becoming obese, and trying to lose the weight. And so I've lost over 100 pounds, and after many failed attempts. And I really wanted to highlight the failed attempts part of it, because anybody out there who is trying to lose weight and feels like a failure because they've tried and they haven't been successful, it's really, I would say, you haven't found something that works for you. Maybe as a kind of a comparison, let's say the average person who tries to quit smoking tries 6 times before they're actually successful at quitting for life. Those who are going to be successful long term, you're probably going to try more than once, and it's not going to be this pretty and smooth journey. It's probably going to be pretty bumpy, because it's more than just focusing on, eat this. Like, the knowledge matters. I don't want to make anybody think no, the knowledge matters, but it's one piece of the puzzle. There's more to the puzzle than just the information piece, because if that was the case, Google would have already solved our problems.
Yeah, I love this quote by Derek Sivers, one of the also like big entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
If the information was the answer, we all would be billionaires with 6-pack abs.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I'm also a coach, and I know that just knowing what to do, there are a lot of smart people who know exactly what to do, but they just seem to, kind of fail to put it into practice. And that's, the biggest like stone to move, changing your habits. And so, I'd like you, before we continue, to ask you a little bit more about emotions and eating, because, from my practice, a lot of people have, kind of like disordered eating behaviors, because we all use, to some extent, food as a mechanism to cope with our emotions. And so very often people just don't develop other tools, right, to deal with emotions, or even being aware of emotions. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on what kind of tools maybe you used, or what kind of practices you studied to use to maybe work with your emotions separately from food.
Yeah, and maybe I could just paint a little bit of a backstory as well. So this is my opinion, but I feel that in our modern culture, it's kind of the way that like digital media works. Like two things kind of get pushed to the top of our consciousness: things that are, people's highlight reels, or things that are really alarmist that trigger us and make us afraid. Because we live in what's known as the attention economy. And the thing that grabs our attention the most is things that make us feel threatened. The thing that'll grab our attention second best is things that make us feel like really happy. So that has kind of colored our perception of life, I believe, to an extent that it almost seems like something is wrong if we're experiencing a difficult emotion, other than maybe being angry at something we read on the internet. Mm-hmm. When in fact, like, emotions are a natural part of life. There isn't something wrong if you're not happy 24 hours a day. So part of life involves going through sadness or sorrow, experiencing joy, experiencing pleasure, but experiencing grief, even experiencing boredom, experiencing fear. All of these different emotions are a natural part of being human. And without it, like, there wouldn't be happiness if we didn't know sadness. There wouldn't be joy if we didn't know sorrow, things like that. And so I share that to say, the first thing is to really become aware of the fact that there isn't necessarily something wrong just because you're experiencing an uncomfortable emotion. Mm-hmm. So kind of the next piece of the puzzle for me was realizing, because I really say awareness is the first step. Mm-hmm. And maybe even more importantly, compassionate awareness. So kind of the next step for me was realizing that emotions, I call them a check engine light. So, on a car, if something is going wrong with your engine, you'll get like this little light on your dashboard, this little yellow light, mm-hmm. And it says check engine, but it doesn't really tell you what the problem is. It just says check engine. Now, when I was using food to deal with all of these difficult emotions in my trauma, it would be the equivalent of putting a piece of like black electrical tape over that light so I couldn't see it. But the problem is still there under the surface. So I think I was afraid of dealing with it because I felt like, and maybe others can enter into this experience, I wouldn't be able to handle the intensity of the emotions I would experience. I was afraid like that they might even break me. If I went through the grief, if I went through the anger, if I went through all these different emotions, that I humanly wouldn't be able to handle it. And so instead I would numb it with food. Mm-hmm. And so I want to encourage people and say, human beings we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We are stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And I wouldn't have understood that except that I've been through this. Mm-hmm. We can endure a lot. So that's kind of like bigger picture stuff. Now, if we want to get a little bit more practical, because probably not everybody is necessarily dealing with the intense emotions of, say, something like trauma. Sometimes it's just like emotional eating is a really broad spectrum thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we think of emotional eating as like eating ice cream, crying over, a romantic comedy or something because of a relationship gone sour. But that would really only be one type of it. There's like boredom eating. There's go ahead.
Also joy. We in our culture we celebrate with food, and so how to also manage that? Maybe celebrate without food.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and I will say, and this is kind of, again, my perspective, like you won't find me saying that food is just fuel, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason is because like I've traveled around the world and I've experienced a variety of different cuisines, and so food is history, food is culture. There's a lot of national pride connected to certain dishes and things. There's family. So we have historically used food to celebrate. But the difference is, throughout most of human history, we did not have an abundance of food. We could only celebrate, let's say, maybe during a time of harvest. So that might come in the fall. And that's why, like in North America, we have the practice of Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Typically, I think that was connected to like abundant harvests. And so historically speaking, we didn't live in a feast world. We had certain times where feasting was a possibility. But for most of our human history, that wasn't the case. Now we live in potentially like a 24/7 feast world in most of the Western world, at least. We have so much food available to us. We can literally feast every single day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the problem lies. This idea that every celebration should necessarily be connected to food, And so you talked about habits, and there's kind of this propensity of our brain. It's like, if we could look at this is a bit of a simplification, but if we could say that every kind of every behavior is, in one sense, an attempt to solve a problem, our brain will learn something and go, oh, that was easy, and let's lock that in as a habit. So maybe I could give a really simple picture. Let's say we go, I feel stressed, I eat chocolate, I feel better. Bingo. Your brain's like, okay, cool. We just learned something really simple. Now, chocolate's not a great long-term solution, but the fact that people would stress eat chocolate means that it is a solution, a viable solution.
Yeah.
But now let's say that the side effect of doing that is, and it could be junk food, it could be chips, whatever people's vices happen to be. But let's say the side effect we go is gaining weight. So then we go, okay, this is a problem. I have a problem with chocolate. I can't seem to control myself. I'm gaining weight. I need to cut out chocolate. Could be sugar, could be carbs, whatever your vice might be. So you cut it out. But then your brain goes, hang on a sec. That was a tool.
Yeah.
That was a solution to a problem. You took that away without solving the problem. And now the cravings start.
Exactly.
So then it starts to, now it starts to feel like, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, wanted to add like this. Whenever I work with, with clients who are also going through this, food addiction, phase station, trying to solve it. I always look at this like, okay, what is this solving for you? Whether is it distress mechanism or tool? Is it a way again, to deal with difficult people, conversations, difficulties at work, and once you figure out, when you like do this behavior, eating certain foods that you don't want to be eating, once we realize when it happens, what triggers it, and what problem a person is solving with that, and once we figure it out, find new tools and substitute it, then usually that food addiction just falls apart, and people like, I didn't even know why I had it in the first place.
Because like the cravings piece, it feels like if I don't answer this craving, it's going to get worse and worse until my head explodes or something like that. It'll come with some sort of, it's called a cognitive distortion. It's called like, say, catastrophizing, But the truth is, like the intense part of emotions doesn't last for very long. So there is a tool called urge surfing. And what it is yes, like even to this day, I experience urges like, I should go and eat an entire large pizza. I used to be a binge eater, and pizza was one of my trigger foods. I don't have to answer that. I can just put it aside. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable for a period of time, but the intense part of an emotion typically lasts about 7 to 10 minutes or less. And so if we know that, don't set a timer and sit on your hands. That's a way to drive yourself nuts. But just know, okay, I'm gonna maybe grab a drink of water and go do something else. And I'll check back in with myself in 10 or 15 minutes and see how I'm doing if I really need it,
Yeah, distracting, I like to call it, distractibility of our mind is actually a quality that we can use. So you feel the urge, go talk to someone, call someone, I don't know, wash some dishes or something. Yeah. So, and I will say one of the tricky parts about food, let's say, versus other vices, maybe alcohol or drugs, is that food is necessary for our survival. Yeah, you can't just quit it.
yeah, we have to be faced with that every day. So I only share that because I'm like, we do want to acknowledge that, like, sometimes when we talk about it like this, it might make it sound easy. And I would say rather it's more like it's simple. So it's not overly complicated, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. So knowing this, even if you do find yourself struggling with it, that's okay, because that's part of being human. So in my approach, so primarily I'm a behavioral psychology-based nutrition coach. And so my approach, I call it brain-driven weight loss. And really, and I think this is probably in alignment with some of the things that you do as well. I call it that because I want to shine a light on the fact that, yes, what we eat matters, how we choose to be active matters, but what will ultimately influence our weight and our health, it's the brain that drives the decision-making. And I think a lot of efforts to create change take this outside-in approach. And what's happening is they're failing to acknowledge our internal environments, our emotions, our mindset, our psychology, our habits, these things that really powerfully influence our behavior. Because while we would like to believe that most of our behaviors are our conscious choice, they're actually not. Many of our behaviors are trivial. Right. But probably it's kind of distressing to some people to think about it like that. But ultimately, many of our choices are a result of our sense of identity, who we believe ourselves to be, the way that we believe the world to be, the habits that we've formed. And so if we realize that many of our behaviors, let's say, are acting in congruence with our sense of identity, that will help to explain things like self-sabotaging behavior, for example. So, if, for example, maybe I would have said, like, I'm addicted to pizza, and I adopted the identity of the jolly fat guy. Mm-hmm. So now when I see pizza, my brain goes, remember, you're the jolly fat guy who's addicted to pizza. So now I'm going to act in congruence with that sense of identity. So I'm going to eat pizza, and a lot of it, and I'm going to pretend that I really love it because I've created this persona of the jolly fat guy, partly because I felt like it was a hopeless case, again, to try to lose all the weight. So basically, I would say, like, if we want to create permanent weight loss, because the idea here, like, you could probably start any diet and lose some weight, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to lose the weight and keep it off, we have to create permanent change. Now, we only create permanent change by establishing a new pattern of behaviors, a new habits, a new sense of identity. And all of this really, at its heart or its core, takes place in our brain. And our brain has this really cool property, you might have talked about this before, known as neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. That's our brain's ability to rewire itself. And that can give us a lot of hope. This is perhaps a bit of an extreme example, and it's not a perfect example, but let's say maybe some people out there will have known somebody who experienced a stroke. Maybe they lost the ability to walk or to talk or things like that. And you will see that they recover to a degree, maybe the ability to walk and sometimes the ability to talk. Now that's pretty amazing, even if they only partially recover that capacity, because the part of the brain that control, the part where the stroke was, that part of the brain's dead and didn't come back. What the brain did is it developed altogether new pathways, relearned new behaviors, and wired around that part of the brain that might have been killed by the stroke. And so that's a pretty, like, extreme example to show you how powerful our brain actually can be in its ability to rewire itself. It's really amazing, actually.
Yes, I mean, neuroplasticity is why we can become completely different people, with completely different identity. From my side, I'd like to add that environment has a lot to do with that.
Yes.
Like, for example, I move around also a lot. Right now, I'm in Mexico. I was in London a week ago. And I find it's so easy to change any habit when you're in a completely new environment. It's like, now I have to build every single thing from scratch. You don't know where to shop, what foods to buy, how to cook, everything. And whatever you start doing, that's the thing you're going to keep doing, because the brain, once it optimizes for something, it likes to stay that way because it's always trying to save you energy. And so when, that's why I also, recommend people, okay, let's figure out how we can change your environment, in your house, remove the stuff that you don't want to be eating that doesn't support your goals, and add a lot of stuff that you want to be eating, maybe shop in different places, go in different, cafes and stuff. So did you do any of that too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you've highlighted something really, really important, and it goes back to we're not always driven by conscious choice, and our environment really will shape our behaviors, and really powerfully. And it's like if you put, let's just say, if you put a bowl of M&Ms on your counter, and you walk past your counter, 10 times a day, you're eventually going to grab a fistful of those M&Ms. And the more times you do it, the more likely it's because it's just there. And so I say it's easier to use your willpower once in the store than it is to use it 100 times a day in your home. Yeah, and so that's part of shaping your environment. If there's a food that you struggle to regulate, don't torture yourself and bring it into your house. Give yourself an I call it, like, don't try to run on a sprained ankle. Mm-hmm. Yes, there might come a time, like I can now, sit in front of pizza and not necessarily feel compelled to eat the entire thing. But there was a time in my life where I would eat every slice of pizza available until I was so full I could barely move. Now, at that time, it's like, it wouldn't make sense for me to constantly, let's say, bring pizza into my home. Mm-hmm. Because I really, at that point, I wasn't in a place. So I had to heal something else before I was able to really properly emotionally regulate it. And so the whole don't run on a sprained ankle. If something's a really difficult food for you to regulate, maybe consider not bringing it into your house for a period of time while you're trying to heal that part of yourself.
Exactly. That's what I also, tell my clients. Okay, I'm not saying you to never have dessert again, but maybe for now, while rebuilding, your habits and overcoming this, maybe food addiction to some degree, maybe let's expose ourselves the least to this, trigger. Not go around, to bakeries, just look at things, not look,
Yeah.
Google your favorite desserts, and for sure not
Yeah.
put it, in your fridge.
Yeah. And so, and maybe the other thing I would talk about, because what we're talking about here, sort of trying to create a new lifestyle, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this idea that we can actually like reverse engineer a healthy lifestyle, because really, could we say the fundamental principles of what make up a healthy lifestyle are going to be largely the same for most human beings. It will involve movement, regular movement. It will involve nutrient-dense foods like vegetables, lean proteins, quality carbohydrates. It will involve getting quality sleep and managing your stress. Those principles aren't really going to change for any human beings. Now, yes, if we zoom in, we're going to see the details look a little bit different. Somebody wants to be a power lifter, somebody wants to be a marathon runner, and so on. Okay, cool. But the fundamental principles remain the same. Really, then it becomes about how do we engineer a lifestyle that suits the things that you enjoy and your particular circumstances, your personality, that kind of thing.
Yes, and I think this personalization aspect of it sometimes people find difficult. Like, yeah, I understand this, but how is it going to work in my life specifically? Do you have any, I don't know, tools or tips for people how to maybe personalize those principles, stress management, healthy eating, sleep, eating nutrient-dense foods, sleep, movement, how to find their own way of doing those simple, basic things?
I like to say
Maybe what helped you.
take imperfect action. So just start with something, and then you're going to figure out whether or not it works for you or how to make it work. If you try to figure everything out in your head before you ever take a step, you're just going to remain frozen in what we call like paralysis by analysis. Mm-hmm. You're just going to overthink it and never do anything. So it's like, just start, figure out, because so when I work with somebody, we'll work on building a particular skill, let's say for a 2-week block. And it obviously takes more than 2 weeks to build a habit, but we want to establish a skill that in that 2 weeks, we're going to figure out one, I'll give you an idea. Let's say, let's focus on our eating rhythm here. Let's say we're just going to eat 4 times, and we're going to get rid of snacking for right now, right? So we're just going to try and eat 4 times over the course of the day. So I'm not going to say that's the perfect eating rhythm for everybody, but that's a starting point. We're going to try to implement that, because I think, like, for example, snacking is really not a helpful behavior. Yeah. Snacking is like, I just feel a little bit uncomfortable, so I better eat something, just to tide me over, or, just until what? Like, it's okay to experience hunger. Hunger is not an emergency. So let's say, we're going to eat 4 times a day. So maybe, just get into a regular rhythm of eating. So that helps us to regulate our hunger, because our body gets used to, okay, I eat at sort of these set times, and in between them, I don't really have the hunger so much. But for some people, that might become impractical. So they go, okay, you know what? It's actually probably easier if I eat 3 times a day, or even 2 times a day if somebody wants to practice intermittent fasting. But we just needed a starting point. And as we try to implement it, we'll figure out what works and what doesn't work. But we really have to take steps forward. We have to do something. So maybe we want to establish a movement or an activity habit. We could say an exercise habit, but I like to say movement or activity, because not everybody necessarily wants to go to the gym. Okay, cool. What's something you enjoy doing? We could start with walking, because what we want to do, I like to talk about the repeatability of a behavior determines how likely it will become a habit. So if you try to set the behavior as, let's say, walk for 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week, chances are you're not going to succeed at that habit, because the repeatability of it is actually a little bit difficult if this is not already an established habit. On the other hand, if you set it as walk for 10 minutes 3 times a week, obviously we would like to see you do more activity than that. In fact, I would say, let's just say walk for 10 minutes a day, because I'm pretty sure almost everybody could walk for 10 minutes a day. That's what I call a CMG, or a can't miss goal. So we just set that goal to pattern a repeatable habit of daily activity. Now you can always build on that, But what we're doing is we're building a foundation of every day I deliberately move my body.
Yeah.
And once that gets wired in, we're able to expand and grow that habit.
Yeah, it's always, start easy, make it consistent, and then build on top of that when necessary. Not necessary, then just keep it there. And that's, where I think a lot of people struggle and fail. They're like, okay, I'm going to rebuild my whole lifestyle all at the same time, and I'm going to try to figure out as I go everything. And
that's like a guaranteed path to overwhelm. Trying to change everything. So, but the way here's kind of how our brain works. So let's just say somebody decides, okay, I'm going to embark on this transformation. So now the reason that we do this is we get a picture in our head of how I'm going to look, and more importantly, how I will feel when I accomplish this transformation. So we start to create this picture in our subconscious mind, our imagination. Our brain doesn't distinguish between the things that we imagine and the things that we do in reality. And so our brain will start to reward us with a chemical called dopamine. That's a neurotransmitter that makes us feel pleasure. So it's rewarding us as though we've already accomplished the result. So now there's actually a biological purpose to this, I believe. So we're naturally resistant to change. You already talked about this. Our human beings, we like to I love how you put it, we like to optimize and basically make things as efficient as possible to conserve as much energy as possible. I call that a part of our family biology. So we need this surge in dopamine and a little bit of excitement about change to help us overcome our natural resistance to change. The problem is that's going to die off in like a week or two because your brain's like, I can't keep you high all the time. That was just to get you started and to help you overcome the resistance to change. Now we need to establish this as like a pattern of behavior. But what people will say is, I'm not motivated anymore. I say that wasn't really truly motivation. That was pushing you over your resistance to change. So if we're going to succeed long term, we need a reason that we're willing to be uncomfortable. So our primal basic nervous system is hardwired to seek out comfort. And we live in a world with unprecedented levels of comfort and convenience. Your smartphone can get you everything, from entertainment to food delivered to your door, to a type of human connection. It's not the same as being in person, but you can basically, with your bum barely leaving your chair, other than maybe to go to the bathroom or to open the door for the delivery driver, do everything without moving. Now, our primal nervous system loves that because it's wired to help us survive famines and food scarcity and conserve energy. Now, there's a part of us, though, that makes us human. And I would say it's our soul. Other people might express it differently, but let's say there's a soul that makes us human. Mm-hmm. We want to grow. We want to become better. We want to learn. We want to advance ourselves. That we have this innate desire to do this. But the problem is growth is uncomfortable. It is actually moving out of our comfort zone. So we have this tension between our nervous system that says, I want to stay comfortable, and this human desire to, I want to grow and become better and be inspired, and I want to live life more fully. So if we're going to be willing to be uncomfortable, we need a really good reason to do it. Otherwise, we'll just default back to staying in our comfort zone.
Yeah. And, just wanted to mention, I read in some book about, human evolution, that drive to seek out, new experiences, to grow, to change, that comes actually from our evolutionary past, where usually if you stay in the same place, it means the resource is going to run out and you're going to probably struggle to survive in that place. So you need to go out and seek out new resources. But obviously, when you find them, you kind of then want to work on your safety and making sure that you are comfortable and not, in some sort of danger. And so, but that evolutionary push, to go and seek out resources, it was a given. Like, if you don't do that, you'll probably die, or your ancestors or your kids will die, have a potential to die. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, if you stay comfortable, well, nothing probably going to happen. You're just going to stay comfortable and have the same job, have the same food and everything.
Yeah. So so the other thing, in the age of information, weight loss is more difficult than ever because we have engineered a world of basically perfect convenience. We've done it. We've solved it. Starvation, other than in third world countries in desperate situations, in first world countries in particular, where a lot of these health crises, in third world countries, they're not talking about weight loss, but we've done it. We've figured out, we've engineered food to the point where, and food production to the point where we have so much food that we're carrying extra food around on our bodies in the form of body fat. Body fat itself is not inherently evil, could we say. It's a famine reserve. That's what it is. And we store fat because it's really calorie dense. So 1 gram of fat holds 9 calories versus a gram of carbohydrates, which holds 4. And protein, officially it's 4, but I would say it's actually 3.2 if you want to get technical. But so it makes sense to store body fat. But that the fact that body fat is calorie dense also means that it's slower to burn it up, because it takes more effort to burn 1 gram of fat than it does to burn 1 gram of carbohydrate, for example. And so we want to just understand that to realize we can gain weight very quickly. Our bodies are really good at storing fat. Mm-hmm. Our bodies will biologically resist losing fat because without this mechanism, we would have died off a long time ago, because we didn't always live in this feast world. We mostly lived in a famine world for all of human history.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think get, angry because of that. I don't know, towards their bodies or themselves. They're like, why is it happening to me? Why am I keep storing fat? It seems like every time I even look at food, but it's just how our body are evolved, and our brain and everything are evolved to function, to help us to survive.
Well, you kind of touched on something just in terms of like we get frustrated by this, and I think it's because our expectations have become distorted. So we've been sold fad diets and quick fixes and magic pills and slimming shakes, and for such a long time that we've been sold the idea that weight loss is quick and easy, and truthfully, we want to believe it. There's got to be a line from a movie somewhere that's like, I want to believe, or something like that. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it's Peter Pan or something, but essentially we want to believe the promise, even though deep down we know it's a false promise, because it's a really attractive idea. It can be quite discouraging in one sense to acknowledge the reality that weight loss, like permanent weight loss, is actually quite challenging.
Yeah, especially in our environment. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but that in itself could also be a little bit exciting, because challenges are where we grow. It's where we develop as human beings. And so if we could not see it as like, I have to suffer my way through this, but this is a journey of growth I'm going on, where I'm going to better myself as a human being. And so if we could just make peace with the reality, the biological reality. Mm-hmm. Now, here's one other thing. So because I've been morbidly obese, I say a fat cell is a gift that keeps on giving. Once it's created, it's always there. And biologically, that was great. That made perfect sense. We didn't have to recreate it, because it's going to stay with us for life. Now, what it means is maybe I can shrink them, I can empty them, but they're always there waiting to be refilled. And that's why weight regain can happen so quickly and so easily. If I start eating like an undisciplined toddler, I will become obese like so quickly, because I have all the fat cells there to be obese. Yeah.
And usually, especially, for people who are doing yo-yo, dieting, or, all these changes, every time the weight comes back, it comes back with surplus because of that fat. Because the body, the body overshoots every time. That's another thing I wanted to mention. It's like the body wants to protect you to the best of its ability. And so every time you lose weight and then start regaining it, your body is like, okay, we went through this stressful period of lack of food. Now we need to build more reserve just in case the same thing happens. And so the body will build up some new fat cells so you can store more for the next time.
Yeah. And I love that, the way that you express it there. It's a really, the body wants to protect you, and so we will overshoot.
And it suits everything, I just wanted to mention. It's like, that's why there is that drive to overeat, because the body doesn't really know. Your brain doesn't see like all this environment. All it sees is your like internal, cues from the things, you eat or you do, but it's not sure whether you're going to eat tomorrow or not, whether you're going to have food or not. That's why it's trying, okay, well, we have food, let's eat it. And that's why it's also, I believe, it's so hard for people to control eating habits because of the drive naturally installed in us.
Yeah, that's, again, you express it really perfectly. I love this. It's very true. The uncertainty of life, if we look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's we know now that maybe it's an incomplete picture, but it's a really good one anyways. Our basic needs are for like safety, security, food, that kind of thing. And so the uncertainty of tomorrow makes us more likely to push back into that, right? And we live right now, like say in a fairly politically turbulent time, a time where people are more afraid, a time where people are being triggered and more fearful of a virus. And I don't want to dive into the politics of that at all, but just really to say that we're in this turbulent time right now. People are more fearful. They are being triggered more frequently. There's more divisiveness happening. People are feeling threatened. So it's pushing us more and more back into this sort of primal state where we're now looking after our most basic needs first. I need to defend myself, my life, and so on. And so actually, again, like we joke about, the COVID-15 or the COVID-20 or whatever, but it's really, in one sense, it's a response to constantly being emotionally triggered and being led to feel like unsafe or threatened and so on.
Yeah. No, I'd like to maybe right now switch gears a little bit more, if you don't mind, to practical food tools that maybe you use to lose, that much weight and keep it off, that you managed to keep it off. Food tools, something maybe like what I like to call also food rules, like what helps you also today to keep the weight that you want to be in and prevent, overeating, all these things. Like, for example, my thing, I don't eat not whole foods. So anything made into flour, juice, blended, or that doesn't make me chew, I don't eat it because I know at some point it can make me overeat.
I like that, actually. Things you don't have to chew that you choose not to eat. So some of the simple ones are, generally speaking, I don't eat after 8 p.m. Why? Because I don't make good food choices after 8 p.m. My brain is tired, and I will seek out pleasure foods. And so I do well with firm boundaries. Not everybody does, but I do. And so I set that boundary. I don't eat after 8 p.m. Some people won't like this, but most of the time I skip breakfast. Why? Because I'm not necessarily hungry first thing in the morning. So I might not eat until 10, 11, noon, because maybe that's when I start to genuinely feel hunger. And so I do practice a type of intermittent fasting. And I guess the only reason I hesitate to really share that is because people can use intermittent fasting for good, or they can use it in the wrong way. And if you're not in a healthy relationship with food, like I was in the past, I would use intermittent fasting kind of in exchange for eating junk food. Like I've starved myself until now, so now I can eat junk. But used in a healthy way, intermittent fasting can be quite useful. So it means that I don't necessarily have to count calories, because I've created a type of restriction. And again, we don't necessarily like this idea that we have to, but the reality is we live in this overabundance of calories. Like we do need to put some boundaries in place, because our natural basic human tendencies are to overeat. So for me, my boundaries are generally that I don't worry about breakfast. And if you think about most breakfast foods, they're junk, like cereal,
dessert,
like toast. Yeah, toast is cake. Like, so I'm not really missing out on much. Maybe the third thing is my meals almost always have three basic components. I start with what's my protein source, because protein is going to keep me full. It supports, muscle and so on. What are my vegetables? What are my colorful vegetables? And then what's my carbohydrate source? On the side, we're going to figure out like where the healthy fats come from and so on. But really, I build most of the time. I don't want to say this perfectly, and some people eat soups and stews and things like that. But 8 times out of 10, what's my veggie? What's my protein? What's my carb? Just build this. I build variety and novelty into my meals with spices and herbs. So I have probably 25 different spice blends in my cupboard.
Yeah, because I'm also a huge fan of spices and herbs. Simple food tastes different every time.
Absolutely. That's, we get excited about, say, exotic cuisine, but really most meals are going to be built around these sort of fundamental pieces. It's the flavors that you get from, herbs and seasonings that are going to make it a little bit different, a little bit more novel. Maybe the other rule I could say is I don't eat treats as a snack. So let's just say I wanted to eat a piece of my wife's delicious banana bread, which you probably wouldn't eat, but you can take my word for it. It is delicious. I will eat it at the end of a meal. So there's two reasons for that. One, I'm not eating it to satisfy hunger because I've already eaten a nourishing meal that makes me feel satisfied. So now I'm less likely to overeat it. Secondly, because I have some protein and some vegetables and some complex carbohydrates in my stomach, that meal is going to take more time to digest, which means I'm not going to spike my blood sugar and create future cravings. So in a nutshell, for me, intermittent fasting works. I generally don't eat after 8 p.m. I put treats at the end of a meal, and my meals almost always are made up of a protein, colorful vegetables, and a healthy carbohydrate source.
Yeah, I think that's a very good, place for most people to be. And I also think, it's not as difficult as people think. I also would like, to ask you about your strategies around like different food products and also ingredients. Like, do you have any rules around that? Because a lot of people, I work with and just generally who ask me questions, find it difficult to figure out all the like ingredients, what food is, good for you, what food is not good for you, based on their ingredients or, packages, like what snack is good, what snack is not good, like what general, like maybe advice or maybe a personal specific advice, like you have around those.
Generally, snack foods aren't going to be healthy. So snack foods are cheap and convenient. So they're not likely to, they've tried to make, I think, some sort of like snackables or cravables or something they call it, where they have some protein in there. But generally speaking, snack foods aren't going to be healthy. There's no purpose to snacking. It's merely to comfort ourselves. There's no, you're not starving if you haven't eaten for 2 hours. You need to go 72 hours without a single calorie before we start to move into what would be known as the actual starvation response. So snacking is more or less useless. I understand why we do it. We do it for pleasure, but it does not help us. So I say that because basically anything that comes in a snack package it's not going to help you. And that's the reality of it. And it sounds kind of cold to say it. You're like, yeah, but I enjoy eating it. I'm like, of course you do. They're engineered to be that. But you need to be aware of what you're up against. These foods are specifically engineered to trigger a dopamine response in your brain. They're engineered to bypass your mechanisms for satiety. They're engineered for you to overeat. Every time you go to eat something is another opportunity to potentially overeat. So if it comes in a package, now there are certain things, let's say like lentils or rice or oats, which are more or less single ingredient foods. They're the exception to the rule. But generally speaking, so I encourage people to eat mostly whole foods, and I don't say exclusively because most people don't do well with absolutes, but most of the time, 8 times out of 10, you want to be eating whole foods. So then it becomes more important. How do you, because the number one excuse I think I would hear is I don't have time or I don't have energy. So it's like, well, how do we make this easier? My number one thing is frozen vegetables. Because they're picked at peak ripeness and they're flash frozen. And yes, you lose a little bit of B and C vitamin, but they retain their nutrient integrity because they're blanched and flash frozen. So really, after a week, they're going to hold more nutrition than a fresh vegetable that's been sitting in your fridge. And, but the other thing is someone's done the prep work for you. So that takes away the excuse of like, well, I don't have time to like cut and prepare all of this and so on. It's like, no, it's already been done for you. You can, and then maybe I would say outsource the cooking to your appliances if you feel like you don't have time. So I have a rice cooker, I have a slow cooker, I have an oven. So I generally speaking will want to cook things that don't necessarily require my monitoring. So let's say I could make roast veggies. So I'll just take it, throw into a glass tray, put some seasoning on it, put it in the oven, set a timer for 25 minutes, go away, come back, and I have roast vegetables. That took me less than 60 seconds.
And go ahead.
Well, I do the same thing with like say rice or quinoa. Scoop of rice, 2 cups of water, put the lid on, hit start. My rice cooker does it. Like and just come back in 25 minutes. And the two of them take roughly the same time. I've got an air fryer, which is just basically a miniature convection oven. So I could take, let's say, even a pound of ground turkey, throw it in the air fryer, set it for 20 minutes, come back. So now all 3 things take maybe 20 minutes, but none of them need to be monitored.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I come back, and now I've got like some rice or some quinoa. I've got some roast vegetables with some flavoring, and I've got something that I've cooked, so a protein source. And the air fryer will create some nice little crispiness and things around it. and it cooks on a rack, so some of the fat can render off as well. I'm not against fat, but fat is calorie dense and it's easy to overconsume because it's tasty. So it's really about making this process of healthy eating simple. Snacking doesn't help you, like it doesn't. It just doesn't. And I'm not saying like never eat, your mama's tasty cookies or something like that. But let's call it what it is. Snacking is purely like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I don't want to feel a twinge of hunger. So become friends with hunger as well.
Yeah.
Like become familiar with it.
And a lot of people, there is just so much confusing information. People hear like, or if I go too many hours without any food, then I'm gonna have this starvation response, and then my body started burning muscle and storing fat, and all this information that has, like, we know now that it has no base in real science. But I think it comes from like the era of bodybuilding where people needed to eat more to grow, and now all of a sudden everyone needs to eat 6 meals a day for when sitting and working on their computer. Like,
how would human beings have survived if we had to eat like 6 times? Sometimes they only ate once a day. Why? Because that was when they had food available.
Yeah, exactly.
And the chances of like, I'm going to burn some muscle, like, okay, the easiest muscle to regain is muscle you've already built, right? And the process of building muscles is a slow process. Like the world of bodybuilding has done many good things for fitness, so I don't want to knock it, but it's also created a lot of distorted perceptions around what, like, oh, I'm afraid to lift weights because I don't want to get big and bulky. Well, good luck. Like, try your hardest because these people train like, sometimes twice a day, 6 days a week to try to get that. Like, they work so hard to get that. If you're worried about getting big and bulky, like there's zero chance you're going to be putting in that much time and effort.
Yeah, and it's for sure not going to happen in a day. Like, and you can stop at any moment when you see like you are getting bulkier.
And maybe that's connected also to this fear of the number on the scale. Like, the scale is a useful tool, but it's an incomplete data point. And so it's important to understand that as well. Like, it does tell us a useful piece of information. I don't think we should throw the scale away, but it doesn't tell you things like your worth as a human being.
Yeah.
So if we can see it for what it is, but on the same token, if you're a female and you're, say, 5'6" and 250 pounds, it's not all muscle. Like, we can let go of the idea. And I say that with compassion. Like, we do need to be able to acknowledge the reality of our present situation, as uncomfortable as it might be, if we want to create change.
Yeah. And I think on kind of like final note, I'd like to add also that we're not here to tell anyone how much weight, fat or muscle they should carry. I think it's everyone's personal choice. But we just like, to give people tools and a little bit more awareness around like this, body weight and fitness and food and how to change it. And also, maybe help people to realize that there is a lot they can do, and that also in our environment, there are things that influence people a lot. So by default, if we do nothing, if we pay attention to nothing, and we respond to every cue to eat from the environment that we get these days, we're all going to end up obese, diabetic, sick, barely moving. And so we do need to figure out a proactive way to manage that, food and fitness and lifestyle environment.
Absolutely. You said that really well, and I'll just wrap up on this note. One, compassionate awareness is the first step to change. So really being able to kindly look at yourself and your present situation. And number two, trying to better yourself in terms of your health and fitness. Or maybe I could even say it this way: your present condition isn't a judgment of who you are as a human being. But it's okay to want to better your health and to better yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's an amazing pursuit, and I think that's common to all of us. So thank you, Jon, for telling us your story, sharing your story, giving people a lot of tools that help you to transform your health and fitness, and also a lot of tools that you're using with your clients to help them to transform their health, fitness, and ultimately life. So thank you for coming to my podcast as a guest.
Well, thank you. And I think I'll be extending an invitation to hop over to my podcast called Wellness Unplugged. And I'd love to have you on as a guest. You have some really useful insights there that I'd love for my audience to hear as well. I love the way that you express things. It's very helpful for people.
Yeah, thank you, Jon. By the way, I forgot to ask, like, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? You know, be on top of what you're up to, your podcast, etc.
Yeah. Well, I have what's known as a vanity URL. So it's an easy one to remember. It's nofndiets.rocks. So nofndiets.rocks. It's a play on my company. My company's Freedom Nutrition Coaching. So nofndiets.rocks /wellness-unplugged-podcast. So that's where people will be able to find that. Or they can go to my website, freedomnutritioncoach.com. And if it would be helpful for your listeners, I do have a free resource that I typically give away. It's a short ebook called Crush Your Cravings. So it's a simple 4-step process to help people, some of the things we explained, just in a little bit more detail. They can go to nofndiets.rocks /crush-your-cravings. You pop in your email address and your name, and I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, and also, of course, we're gonna link everything in the show notes so people can, click and download and learn everything. So great. Thank you, Jon, for sharing this again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.